Hi guys, welcome to episode 9 of the Aerobotics webinar series. I'm Jamie, I'm the product marketing manager, and I'm here with JC, the head of client success. How's it, JC?
Good on you, Jamie. Thanks for the intro.
Cool. Just checking that all the sound and video is working. All good. Cool. So in the webinar episode today, we are going to be going through a couple of updates that we've made to Aeroview. Our team's been working super hard over the last few weeks, bringing new features live for you guys. So let's just maybe go through what these features will be. So we're going to start off with the missing tree counts tool. That's something that we've added. And then we've added a chlorophyll health layer, which is gives you more insight into the health of your trees. Then we've got a tree grouping feature. Then you can generate zones from satellite data. So you can basically split up your satellite data into 2, 3, or 5 zones for soil and leaf sampling. Then we've got an updated scout manager and a pest heat map reporting tool. So right at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So if you guys have any questions throughout, please use the chat to ask us. And we've got our support team on the other end answering them via text, and then we'll also bring them up at the end of the webinar. Cool. So let's just dive right in, JC. So the first new feature that we've added is the tree counts tool.
Yes, so the tree count tool, I think it's super exciting. I think a lot of farmers were really asking us for this tree count tool, and why we've actually brought it in is we really want to help the farmers to understand whether they are really using their blocks to its full capacity. And I'll show you in a second what we mean and how Aeroview helps the farmers really to do that. So to get to your tree count tool within your Aeroview platform, you will have to be on your orchard analysis and scout planning tab on the top left over there. So just keep in mind also that the counts are only for farmers that has drone data in their accounts. So you'll see at the map type we have drone highlighted. We are on drone visual, and then along where we have the other metrics, we have a new feature built in there that just says counts. So if you press count, you'll see that the screen brings up a number of trees highlighted with either light blue colors or dark blue, blackish kind of colors for every single tree. So let me just zoom right in there to show you practically how our farmers are using this information. So while we're waiting for the background tiles to load, let me quickly explain to you that every blue dot on the screens you're seeing represents a tree that we've found, that our algorithms have identified. And every black dot that you can see represents a missing tree that our missing tree algorithm has found or has picked up. So I think it's super important also to remember that this is a brand new feature that we have released. It is still in beta phase. That just means that we are working to refine the algorithms. I think we're getting great results as is, but we're actually helping you to, or we are actually giving you the opportunity as a farmer to help us get better accuracies. So I've zoomed in another layer just to show you a brief example of what I mean, that you can actually help us perform, help our algorithms perform a little bit better. Again, excuse the tiles taking some time to load, but let's carry on in any case. So again, the blue dot represents actual trees that we found, and you can see the back of each blue dot, there's a tree that it represents, and there you'll see where the black dots are. If I just switch off the missing trees, there are actually no trees there. So keep your eye on all of those missing spots, and if I switch on the tree count, it's just going to take a second to load, and there you go. Everyone represents a missing tree. So you can then go and add additional missing trees. So if you've identified a spot where Aeroview did not pick up a missing tree, you can add additional trees. Let's look at an area where we potentially might have missed a spot. Let's say we need an additional missing tree over there. We'll click add additional missing trees. We will then simply go and drop the marker by clicking over there, and then at the top right, we'll just click finish. So that will then add the additional missing tree, and you'll see for this specific block, we've identified 5,473 trees with 906 just before I added this extra missing tree. Now after adding, you'll see there's 907 missing trees in this block. Again, if we then have added missing trees where there should not be any missing trees, you can click on any one that we've mistakenly added, and you'll just click this is not a missing tree, and you will be able to remove this. Now, I think I just also want to mention that we've found that a lot of our farmers really, they are aware of some blocks that might not be used at full capacity. There might be some gaps in the blocks. But I think where this tool really adds an immense amount of value is when you can quantify the numbers. We've had farmers that says, I know that block has about 20 or 50 missing trees. Once we've done the drone flight and we've identified that there's 200 up and up missing trees, that number really gets scary. They're really underutilizing that block, and the numbers really helps them to make better decisions and see how they can improve and run a more effective business. So this is an exciting tool that we've rolled out. So anyone looking to get stuck into this, order your first drone flight, and you'll have the missing trees feature available.
Cool. Thanks, Josie. So the next feature we've got is the chlorophyll health layer, which gives you more insights into the health of each tree on your farm. So let's go through that.
Great. So I think this is my most the one that I like the most, the chlorophyll layer that we've added. I think our agronomy team has also worked super hard in advocating for you guys as our clients to have this additional layer in. And I think, so just before we added the chlorophyll layer, we had a layer in there that said health tab. So you can see the health of the trees where my cursor is on the screen. And actually, to take a step back, where to find this is you'll go to your orchard analysis and scout planning section again. We'll be on the drone map layer. And then within the tree data tab, this is where we have the different metrics on a per tree level. And before we just used to have health, now we've added chlorophyll. So this is just to show you where to get this feature on Aeroview. Now, when we had health as before, which is an amazing tool, we were basically using health to measure the biomass of the trees and calculating whether the trees are actually, healthy in terms of biomass. Are they growing at the same rate as the rest of the trees within this orchard? We were calculating the NDVI along with the biomass. So it's a super accurate tool, especially to monitor younger trees, to really see during the season or from one year to the next, which trees in terms of NDVI or biomass are lagging behind in terms of the rest of the trees in that orchard. So that was a super useful tool. And also for trees that lose their leaves during winter, I think when the season starts up again in the southern hemisphere around September, October, the northern hemisphere, March, April, you would really look for trees. You'll use the health tab to look for trees that it's lagging behind in terms of health or the biomass and the NDVI. But the chlorophyll, so how does the chlorophyll work and how does it differ from health? When we look at chlorophyll, it's a basic estimate of magnesium and nitrogen and iron deficiencies of these trees. So when we really calculate the chlorophyll for each individual tree, we are able to tell you that specific tree with a lower chlorophyll relative to the rest of the trees in the orchard has some sort of deficiency, either magnesium or nitrate or iron deficiencies. And then obviously we have the scouting tool to help you get to those trees. So why did we add this feature in? So when I mentioned before, the health really looks at the biomass. Now, when we look at chlorophyll, it goes straight through the leaves, and it's actually also taking consideration the inner canopy of the tree to have a very accurate measure of the deficiencies of the trees. So a super useful tool. And when I click on this, and this is to show you an example of between the two. So if I go to health, I'm on the health tab now, and you can see that this orchard is, it's fairly evenly spread. Yes, we can identify a couple of trees that might not be as healthy as the rest of them when we look in terms of health. They all fairly have the same biomass and NDVI value. But once we look at chlorophyll, and we're on the chlorophyll tab, now you can really see, oh, okay, there's actually a big variance within that orchard. Potentially in that orchard, there's a lot of those trees that has some sort of deficiency. And once we filter out some of the trees with a lower chlorophyll level, it really gives you a good idea of the extent of this potential problem for this farmer. You can see on the top right, I've just clicked on the histogram bars to highlight the trees with a lower chlorophyll. We've got 1,559 trees with a lower chlorophyll content out of the just under 6,000. So almost a quarter of this farmer's trees has some sort of deficiency. So we've really helped this farmer identify this before he can visually see it. And now using our Aeroview in-field tool, him and his team can really get to those trees to see, you know, what type of deficiency is it and what the corrective measures will be to get an optimum yield at the end of the season. Awesome. So yeah, that's awesome. I really love the chlorophyll tool, and I really recommend the guys play around and use this tool. If you don't have drone data yet, again, we can help you get going.
Awesome. And then something to note about the chlorophyll layer is that it's only available for surveys that were done after March, I think.
That's correct, yes.
So if you don't see it in your account at the moment, it's probably because your most recent drone survey was before March. So
that's correct, yes. So we've changed a couple of things in the algorithms, and we're only able to backdate up until March. But any future flights going forward as of March will have the chlorophyll layer in there.
Cool. Thanks, JC.
Cool.
So the next feature that we've added is the tree grouping tool. So let's go into this.
Cool. So the tree grouping tool, let me show you on Aeroview how to or where to find your tree grouping tool, and then how to use this. So again, we're within the orchard analysis and scout planning section. You'll see on your tabs at the top left. We'll click there. Again, we're on the drone map type. We've got our health layer on for this farm. And now you'll see just under the health layer where we have the rest of our metrics, we've got a new section in there that says tree groups. So you'll see it over here. Actually, before I jump into how to add an additional tree group, I just want to explain why we've actually added this in. And again, this is a strong push from our in-house agronomy team. This really makes a lot of sense. So a lot of the farmers in one orchard or one grove, they will have maybe trees that was planted on a different date, maybe trees with a different rootstock, or trees of a different cultivar within one block. And if you have those and you really want to kind of distinguish them from the rest of the trees, so you just want to look at the health or the canopy size of trees planted in this block 1993 and not the 2000 trees planted in 2000. You can go and isolate those and just measure the tree stats for those planted, let's call it in 1993, relative to the rest of the 1993 planted date orchards. And the same for rootstock or for cultivar. This feature also comes in handy if you have cross-pollinating trees within your orchards. So I think in a lot of times that cross-pollinating trees might affect the chlorophyll or the health tab within Aeroview. So you can basically deselect those, and now you'll get a more accurate reflection of the health of the trees or the canopy of the trees relative to the rest that you want to have a look at. So to set up a new group of trees that was maybe planted the same date or are cross-pollinating trees or have the same cultivar, what we'll do is we'll click on the tree grouping section. We'll then go to add a new group. You'll see it's highlighted in blue. And once we click on add a new group, it'll basically give you an indication of every single tree on that farm, and it'll highlight it in a white ring. So as an example, let's say we want to isolate that tree over there. You see I'll just can basically click on that tree and then it highlights it with a little blue circle, and maybe this is another cross-pollinating tree as an example, and maybe this tree over here. You'll see we highlight all of those, and we can do that by individually clicking on each of those. Alternatively, we can select a larger group of trees all at once. We'll do that by using our polygon measure tool at the bottom right over here. We'll click the polygon measure tool, and now we can select a bigger group by clicking an area around them. So I'm just going to set up an example over here. I want to highlight these group of trees for a specific reason. There you go. And you can see I've highlighted that specific group of trees. And now I'll click on the top right. You'll see I can click next. And let's call this test 2. Now those are all a specific cultivar. Let's say that's all bingos, and with a similar rootstock, we've selected G210, and those all have the same plant date. Let's go to 2006 as an example, and you'll add this group by clicking add at the bottom right. Now you can see that relative to the rest of the trees, it's isolated this group, and you'll be able to look at the health stats or the other metrics just for this group alone. Now to show you actually a practical example of how this is used in practice, let's look at all trees. So what we've got on the screen here is we're looking at the health metric for all of the trees on this orchard. And they are measured relative to every single other tree in this orchard. Now, what I want you to do is to keep an eye on this top left-hand side. So, clearly from the health tab, we've identified a couple of trees over here that slightly have a lower NDVI value. You can see there's some that's a little bit yellow. If I zoom in, actually, you'll get a better idea. There's some that's a lighter green and maybe a yellow. But let's say this group of trees are actually a different cultivar than the rest of the trees within this orchard, and we really want to isolate them. Then we'll group them all in one group. Let's call it cultivar 1. I've set this up before, so let's select cultivar 1. And now when I zoom out, you'll see these two groups. I wanted to isolate from the rest of the trees in the orchard. And I just want to look at the health metrics for those individual trees. And if you remember when I had all the trees on, this area there, the health for that seemed not too bad. There was a little bit a lighter shade of green in some of the trees, but they were still doing fine. If I now compare those trees with the similar cultivar, the similar rootstock, only to the other trees with a similar cultivar, the similar rootstock, now we get an accurate reflection of what's really going on. And you'll see that there's a bunch of trees with maybe a lower NDVI, so you can relative to the rest of the trees. So you can see more yellow or orange trees in there. Let me just quickly show that example one more time. I'll go to tree groups. I'll put the health on for all the trees. Keep your eye on this area over here at the top left.
Maybe expand the bar graph as well.
Yes, let's do that. So the top right, here we can see those trees over there, and you can see where they fall on the histogram bar if we have to highlight them. Look at this grouping over here. Now if we just select cultivar 1, look at the color scheme changing. So this gives you an accurate reflection if you want to highlight or group certain trees. A super useful tool, and I think since we launched it very recently, we've seen a great uptake in this tool for the farmers.
Cool, thanks JC. So the next feature we're going to chat about is the ability to generate zonal maps based on satellite data. So this data is updated every week, and it can be generated into a new map every time.
Yes, that's correct. So once you sign up for Aeroview on our platform, you will immediately get, for every block that you draw up of your farm, you'll get satellite data for that block, for all the rest, for the last 4 years. So you get the historic satellite data for each of those blocks as well. But then for the current satellite data that you want to have a look at, we give you the health data and the moisture index for each of the blocks that you've drawn up on your field. Now what we're looking at here is the normal health data for this field, and you can see we'll get your satellite data if you go to orchard analysis and scout planning. you'll see we have the satellite data highlighted over here, and then you can toggle between health and moisture, and you can even select your dates. Now what we're looking at over here is the greener area. Obviously when you look at NDVIs, your healthier areas. The more we move towards a yellow or orange color, there's clearly something potentially wrong there. There's a lower NDVI value. Now off of a picture just like that, to send your team in to look for potential fixes, or to really manage that orchard a bit more effectively, or to take soil and leaf samples, like you mentioned in the beginning, might be a bit challenging. So what we can now do is we break this up for you into manageable zones of this block. So let's go to show health zones. You can select between the number of zones, either 2, 3 or 5 zones, and now you can see this block has actually been divided up into 5 different health zones, and you'll be able to easier manage that block and see, where should I focus my attention on first. Clearly this part in the middle needs a lot of attention. At the top right over here, I would suggest this farmer sends his team in to go and see what's going on. And if this farmer wants to take soil and leaf samples to get to the root cause of this potential problem, he can then set up a new scout route by going to our scouting section and setting up a new route. He can click on the specific areas that he wants his team to go and take soil or leaf samples. He can save that as a soil or leaf sample test, and that'll just help him to get a good representation of the specific trees in his block. And it doesn't take into the same trees that they've been taking soil and leaf samples, or the same area they've been taking soil samples for the last 10 years. So you can do that now based off of satellite data. Also, for the guys that's using variable rate application spreaders or tractors, they're now able to enter prescription rates for each of these areas. So you'll see for the complete red zone, we've got a 0.04 hectare area, and they can enter prescription rate there. So for, I'd say, your medium area over here, you've got 8 hectare area, you'll put down, let's say, X kilogram of whatever you want to put down there. You'll click update prescriptions. What you'll then do is you'll click download the shapefile. This shapefile will then download a small file to your computer. You can just take that, plug that into your variable rate spreader or whatever application you use, and that'll give you the opportunity to really implement precision farming on your farm by applying your corrective measures very precisely. So super useful tool. And again, this is part of our free platform. So if you sign up today, you draw up your farm, you'll be able to look at the moisture index, the health data for your farm. You'll be able to break your blocks up in zones and manage it a bit better.
Cool. Nice. Thank you. So our next tool is a scout manager. This is just basically like a centralized place for you to manage all your scouts. So let's go through that.
Cool. That's correct. Jamie, so before we had the managed scout section in Aeroview. You used to only be able to do everything from your orchard analysis page. We've actually tracked and see that a lot of people, manage their scouts. They want to have a better look of what's going on. They want to see everything grouped all together, and they also wanted to reschedule reoccurring scouts for their team to go out. So we've created this just easy to use manage scout section, and you'll see before we used to just have 3 tabs at the top left. Now we have a 4th tab called manage scouts. So you'll see this is showing you all the scouts, all the scout routes that you've set up. When we look at schedule scouts, those are all the scouts that's been assigned to one of your team. And then completed scouts is all the scout missions that's been completed for your team when your team went out to go and collect data in the field since you started using Aeroview in-field. So you'll see we only have 6 over here. You can click view more or show more, and it'll bring up the rest of your scout missions. And I think one of the great features that a lot of the farmers were asking us for, so if I set up a scout mission for my team to go and do, I really want them to follow that same scout mission on a weekly basis, every Wednesday. How do I do that? I don't phone them and say, listen, please go to those same trees. I want it recurring. So what you'll be able to do is, let's look at the scout mission set up for these 4 points in the middle, called Aerobotic Scout. So this is a scout route that's been scheduled before. We want to reschedule this to be reoccurring again, so we'll click on Schedule Scout Route. We want to assign this to Devon Osborne, our agronomist, and we will select a date. So we want Devon to go out on the 12th of August, and we want him to go and visit those 4 points again. So that route is scheduled, and it will tell you this is scheduled. What will happen next? So Devon, once he logs into his Aeroview infield app, he will see that there's a new scout route assigned to him, and he needs to go back to those 4 points. Even if he has done it before, he can now go and revisit those. So you'll see we just had 36 scheduled scouts. Now we have 37 scheduled scouts. And again, if you want him to go and do that again on a different date, let's say it was supposed to go out on the 12th. Now we want him to go and do it again on the 19th. So a week later, click that and we'll do schedule scout. So you can set that up for a month or two in advance, and Devon will know every week he'll be able to go and do that scout again. So it's simply very, very, very easy to use, and it really helps the team in the field as well. It's just very easy to manage. It helps with communication, and obviously I think without our scouting tool, whether satellite or drone data, it's not as effective if you're not collecting the data in the field.
Cool, thanks. So the final tool that we're going to talk about is also a really exciting one. It's the pest heat map.
Yes, so this has been coming a long time. We've had a lot of requests for people that said, listen, so I'm collecting all this data in field. I really want a visual representation of this data on the screen. I want to see from a farm level what's really going on, hence the heat map, the hotspot map. So where do you get your hotspot map? On Aeroview. So you'll see on the third tab on the left, we have Scout Reporting. If you open Scout Reporting, you'll see we've selected pest markers, and then we've got 3 types of reporting. So before, we also had markers. We had the graph table that shows you this over a period of time, the pest that occurred during that time period. And then the third one, the new one, we've got the hotspot. So after you've selected hotspot, you can select your date range that you want to view this hotspot for, and then you can select your pest type. I think also super important to remember, once you've selected your pest type, make sure that you've edited your threshold according to your needs. So you can go and click edit when you click edit over here, you can adjust your threshold for whatever pest or disease your guys are collecting information in the field on. Now, if you look at this example of macadamias up in Africa, we can see for this specific farm on the southeastern end over here, there's obviously a big thrips breakout. If we look at the rest of the farm, especially more up on the northwestern side here, not too bad infestation over here, but I think a main focus would be on this area and then maybe a little bit in the middle. If you look at another example for stink bug down in the same farm, the short and medium mouth stink bug, now you'll see for that same date range on this southwest eastern end, nothing really jumping up, nothing too important if we look at the heat map over here. But look at this middle section. Clearly some questions to ask here, why is this a hotspot for the stink bug in this middle region and these orchards next to the pivot? Why is that an important area to focus your attention on? And the hotspot map really gives you a great indication of where to focus your attention on. Let's look at one more example. So the green vegetable bug, you'll see for this specific farm, threshold of 4, and you'll see again, there's some green vegetable bug found on the south over here, some in the middle, and not too much up in the north. Again, this really helps the farmer now to make decisions, to plan for going ahead, and it gives them a good representation of what's going on the whole farm, and to plan and prioritize during the season. So super useful map. A lot of the clients have asked for that. We've got this in now. So the sooner and the more data you collect, the better indication you'll get of what's going on in your farm, and the better will help you to make decisions and optimize your yield throughout the season.
Cool.
Is that all of them?
Yeah, thanks, JC.
Cool.
So I think that wraps up the 6 new features that we've brought up today.
Exciting.
A last thing to mention is that there is, at the bottom of your screen, whenever you're logged into Aeroview, there's a little help section. So that's just a chatbot that links to our supporting docs, and it also links directly to a chat that goes to JC's team. So if at any stage you need help, just reach out to us there.
Can I take 2 seconds to run them through that?
Yeah.
So if you click on help, you'll see we've got some preset answers. So if you want to search for anything, you can click on the search bar, and we've got some very, very nice articles with some screenshots. It very easily shows you what to do, and you can send them on to the rest of your team if you have WhatsApp, to have a quick view of what's going on. And then again, when you click ask, one of the team can get in touch with you via email. You can just type your questions in there, and then we'll get in touch with you ASAP. So again, this is a super useful tool. If you guys have any questions, please reach out.
Cool. So if we can just go, I think we've got a few questions. No, we've got no questions.
So if there is anyone with any questions,
Yeah, please, you can use the chat box.
should we give it a minute? Should we give it a minute or two for any questions to come in? So if there's anyone, please let us know. And myself and Jamie will do our best to answer your questions. And then if we can't answer it, we'll have our agronomy team help us out. That's a great question. We get that very often, and yes, we can do that. There is some variances that might depend on. So it depends on the type of netting, the transparency of the netting, and then the color of the netting. So I think it's safe to say that any white color netting with a 20% transparency rate, we can definitely work on. We get great tree counts. We get very accurate chlorophyll and health measures, and canopy size measures even when we measure that. When we do a drone flight over netting, I think it just gets a little bit tricky when you have black or the dark blue netting. I've seen some of those come up as well. But the standard netting, yes, we've got a ton of clients with netting as well. Yes, that's correct, Frans. We do get the hotspot, the information for the hotspot from our scouting. So if you have your team go out and collect data on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, you'll simply it's as easy as really logging into Aeroview, click on hotspot, select your date range, and immediately your hotspot map will pop up. I think at the moment you will manually, am I right? You'll manually have to go and click every 10th tree.
Or you can draw a polygon around each row, but you'd have to do that manually as well.
Yes, or you can select the polygon tool, like Jamie said, to go and draw that just around that whole row. Yes, you can, or well, let me put it to you this way. You cannot export the hotspot data, but you can export scouting information. So for anyone still on the screen, if you go to your graph maps, you'll see right at the bottom, we have export data. Now from there, you'll be able to either export a pest trap report in CSV or a PDF report. If you click on the PDF report, it'll email you a PDF report with all the photos taken, the notes made, the type of pest, and then also a geo-reference location for those. So it can be exported. You just won't see the hotspot map. But again, super useful. So I think a big focus for us is tree crops. We've decided to narrow down our focus for the permanent crops, the higher value crops. This platform is available for maize as well, and for those of pineapples. We just won't be able to do individual stem counts or whatever for the maize, but when it gets to anything with trees, we can do individual tree counts, and we give you all the information that you need. But you can definitely get drone flights for your maize, or even just use our satellite and scouting information if you have maize farmers or maize clients. So you will put in the information on the scouting application. So Actually, that's a great question, Jamie. Anyone that wants to download our scouting application, you can do so either from the Apple Store, or the Google Play Store. The application is just called Aeroview in Field. It's free. You can download it and get your team scouting today. So it is a very simple and easy to use tool. You can literally on the screen, you'll walk in your orchards, and then if you see a pest or disease you want to identify, you'll simply click pest or disease. It'll ask you whether this is a trap or whether it's not a trap. It'll ask you if you want to take a photo or not, and you can add various other comments, and you just save that marker that you've put down there. I think it's super important to remember also that every marker that you save in field is geo-referenced. So you will be able to see, and that's also how we create this hotspot map. You will be able to see where that information is coming from on a farm or on an orchard level as well. So you just enter all of that information on the scouting device. Super easy and simple to use. So I know you really want to start managing your farm from the youngest trees, and obviously that's the trees that you really need to look out for and really need to get managed properly to get the orchard as even as possible. But for us to give you accurate tree counts, health statistics, canopy size for the trees, we're looking at a minimum size of 80 centimeters height and at least a canopy of 80 centimeters, 50 to 80 centimeters of a canopy size. Anything smaller than that, the algorithms is going to struggle to give you 100% accurate tree count. So we want to focus on everything 80 centimeters in canopy and height and bigger than that, which I think is still fairly small and young enough to collect information and to help that tree get into its full capacity when it starts bearing its full fruit in year, depending on what crop type, but year 3, 4, 5.
Cool. So that's all. I think we're done with questions.
Awesome.
And yeah, that wraps up this episode. So we host these webinars. We try to do it once a month, sometimes once every 2 months. So just stay tuned to our social media channels, and we'll let you know when we've got a recording of this one to send you and when the next one will be. Thanks,
Cool.
JC.
Thanks, Jamie.